In the wild days of the American frontier, many people believed the West held a promise of land, freedom, and a brand new life. One spring morning, 3 small families left everything behind to chase that promise. 15 people in total, men, women, and children. They loaded their lives into wooden wagons, tied their horses, and began the long journey west. There was Thomas Whitaker, a hard-working farmer who dreamed of owning land of his own. His wife Mary rode beside him with their 2 young sons. There was Samuel Bennett, a quiet carpenter traveling with his brother and their families. They hoped to build homes in a place where no one would tell them how to live. And then there was Robert Carter's family. Among them was Robert's daughter, a young woman named Rose. Rose was known for her kindness and bright spirit. Her golden hair often moved with the prairie wind, and her hopeful eyes reflected the dreams of everyone traveling west. For the first few days, the journey felt almost magical. The prairie stretched endlessly before them. Wild horses ran across distant hills, and at night, they gathered around a campfire under a sky full of stars. But the West was not a gentle place. Soon, the road began to test them. A violent storm struck them on the open plains. Winds howled like wolves across the land. The wagons shook as rain poured down. Children cried while the men fought to keep the horses calm. One wagon wheel cracked during the storm. It took the men nearly a full day to repair it. Food supplies grew smaller, and the endless road ahead suddenly felt much longer. Days later, they crossed into rougher land. Rocky hills replaced the open prairie. Narrow trails twisted through dry valleys. One evening, while the sun was falling behind the mountains, Thomas Whitaker noticed something on the horizon. Riders. The wagons stopped. Everyone turned. Far away, 3 horsemen rode slowly towards them. The outlaws approached with cold smiles and rifles resting across their saddles. Outlaws. "Well now, looks like we've found ourselves a traveling market." The outlaw leader rode closer. "You folks look mighty tired. How about you hand over your supplies and we let you keep breathing?" The families froze. None of them were fighters. They were farmers, builders, dreamers. Then suddenly, a gunshot echoed across the valley. One of the outlaw's rifles flew from his hands. Another shot struck the dirt near their horses. A lone rider appeared at the top of the ridge above them, tall, calm, wearing a long, dusty coat and a wide-brimmed hat. His revolver rested steady in his hand. "That's far enough." The outlaws looked up angrily. "You planning to die today, stranger?" The rider tilted his hat slightly. "Name's Samuel Cole, and I reckon you boys picked the wrong travelers." Gunfire erupted. Samuel fired twice. Both shots struck their targets. The outlaws turned their horses and fled into the hills. The valley fell silent. The families stared at the lone cowboy riding down towards them. Thomas Whitaker stepped forward. "Mister, you may have just saved our lives." Samuel looked at their wagons, the tired horses, the frightened children. "You folks headed west?" "Yes, sir. Looking for a place to settle." Samuel studied the mountains in the distance. "You picked a dangerous road. There's outlaws out here and Apache territory not far from here." The families exchanged worried looks. "Then we'd be grateful for your help." Samuel hesitated. And that was when he noticed her, Rose. She stood beside one of the wagons, brushing dust from her dress. Her eyes met Samuel's. "Thank you for helping us." Samuel gave a small nod. "Well, I suppose I could ride with you folks a while. Make sure you reach someplace safe." The journey west had just become even more dangerous, but now they were no longer alone. The wagons rolled west again. Samuel Cole rode ahead of the caravan, watching the hills and valleys with careful eyes. The land was changing. The open prairie was gone. Now the road wound through rocky canyons and dry desert plains where danger could hide behind any ridge. Every evening, the families made camp in a tight circle of wagons. Fires crackled beneath the dark western sky, while the children slowly began to laugh again. Samuel usually sat a little apart from the others, quietly cleaning his revolver or watching the stars. But one night, Rose walked over and sat beside him. "You always sit out here alone?" Samuel smiled faintly. "Habit, I suppose." Rose looked out across the dark land. "Do you ever get tired of riding?" Samuel chuckled quietly. "Sometimes, but the road always seems to find me again." Rose studied him for a moment. "Well, we're glad it found you this time." Days passed. The caravan slowly pushed deeper into the frontier. One afternoon, Samuel stopped his horse suddenly. He raised his hand. The wagons halted behind him. "What is it?" Samuel studied the distant ridge. Apache territory. The families grew silent. They had all heard stories about sudden raids and arrows flying from the hills. Samuel turned in his saddle. "Stay close together, no wandering, and keep the children inside the wagons." They moved through the valley slowly. The wind whispered through the rocks. Every shadow felt alive. But the Apache warriors never appeared. Instead, another danger found them. Late the next afternoon, Samuel noticed dust rising far behind the caravan. Riders. More than before. 8, maybe 10. Outlaws. Samuel rode back towards the wagons. "They're coming fast. Circle the wagons." The men quickly pulled the wagons together into a defensive ring. Women gathered the children. The outlaws arrived moments later, rifles ready, greedy smiles on their faces. "Well now, that's quite a traveling party." Samuel stepped forward. "You boys should turn around. Last chance." The outlaw leader laughed. "Kill the cowboy first." Gunfire exploded across the valley. Samuel moved like lightning. His revolver flashed again and again. One outlaw fell from his horse, then another. The settlers fought too, clumsy but brave. Within minutes, the remaining outlaws fled. That night, the campfire burned brighter than ever. The families knew the truth. Without Samuel Cole, they would never survive this journey. 2 days later, Samuel guided the wagons through a narrow mountain pass. The trail curved between tall cliffs, and suddenly, the mountains opened. Before them lay a beautiful hidden valley. Green grass rolled across the land. A clear river flowed through the center. Tall trees lined the hills. The settlers stared in amazement. "Is this real?" Samuel smiled slightly. "Safe water, good soil, and mountains for protection. Reckon this place could hold a town." The settlers knew instantly. They had found their new home. Over the next few weeks, Samuel helped them build. Cabins rose from fresh timber. Fences stretched across the valley. Fields were cleared for crops. For the first time since leaving the east, the settlers felt safe. One evening, Samuel saddled his horse. Rose approached him quietly. "You're leaving?" Samuel nodded. "The road calls." Rose looked down for a moment. "You could stay." Samuel smiled softly. "Maybe someday." Rose stepped forward and hugged him gently. "Thank you for giving us a future." Samuel tipped his hat, then turned his horse towards the distant hills. The settlers watched as the lone cowboy rode away, a hero of the frontier, heading once again into the unknown.